if y'all want to hear this, you're gonna listen. Even if my audio is trash, basura. Even if it's caca, you're gonna be listening to this. So it doesn't even matter. So I think last time we stopped off in chapter 14, which was the end of the story, and I kind of low key, it's like this author did say she was gonna keep going, but like I low key was just like, nah, she's lying. Cause how are you gonna say this story's over? Like this is like an ending. Like this shit, you ended the whole conflict of the story. There's no way you can keep going, but there is. There's 10 more chapters now. Yeah, and I don't know what the next ones are gonna be about, cause she already wrote like a side twice story with Sunset. She's already read a side set story, and like why would she just choose like 10 more chapters to write about that? She has a whole story about that already. So like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping like we get some more. I don't know. I don't even know anymore. Like I don't know what I want. Let's just read. On the Precipice, chapter 15. Actually, so I'm gonna say what happened last chapter. So last chapter, basically, Sunset went to some bridge or something, and I guess she was about to jump or something. I can't remember. But then Sideswipe like walked up and was like, "Hey, you're pretty far up. You probably should step down." She was like, "Oh yeah." She stepped down, and then she like walked back home. And like Celestia and Luna, I think they were looking for her. Like they didn't know where she went. So like when she came back, she was like, she thought she lost Sunset for real that time. Like she was low key like crying. Like she was sad. Like I can't lie to you, she was sad. But she returned. Sunset did return, and it kind of embraced. And Sunset accepted Celestia as like the mother role in her life for the first time. So that's what happened last time, basically. So chapter 15, fixing it up. Sunset groaned as the bothersome rays of sunlight hit her face and slid past her eyelids, replacing the calm dark of the night for a bright red light that wouldn't let her continue sleeping. She frowned and pulled the cover over her face. She felt tired despite being acutely aware that she'd slept way too much. Her throat was dry as well, and her eyes puffy and sore. 5 more minutes, Princess Celestia, she mumbled. Princess Celestia? Celestia's voice hit her ears, sounding amused. It was only when a gentle hand landed on Sunset's shoulder that she remembered that she wasn't in Canterlot's palace or under the Sun Prince's care. Surprisingly, the thought didn't make her heart clench this time. Begrudgingly, she rubbed off the greens around her eyes and opened her eyelids. Then she peeked out of the cover, realizing that she had once again fallen asleep on the couch. This time, however, the cover she'd been sleeping under was a soft cream color and had Celestia's cutie mark embroidered on it. She found that she didn't mind. With a yawn, she sat up on the couch, rubbing her eyes and turned to look at the woman sitting next to her. Unsurprisingly, Celestia was drinking peppermint tea and looking at her with a calming expression. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. For some reason, Sunset found herself nodding. Despite the fact that she slept on the couch fully clothed and now felt quite tired, she still hasn't woken up all night. Surely that accounted for something. Will it be a Friday tradition for you to sleep on the couch?" The woman teased. "You know, the offer to move it to your room still stands." Sunset simply groaned and rolled her eyes at the Odo's attempt of humor, but still accepted it when she was offered a cup of tea of her own. When she took a tentative sip, the aura of peppermint hit her senses, providing an overwhelming wave of nostalgia. For a moment she was back in Candlelight, in the princess's study. She could almost smell the parchment and ink, and hear the princess's endless lectures about magic. A bittersweet smile painted her lips. So about this Princess Celestia," Celestia started, putting away her now empty cup of tea. "Is she the same, pony who raised you?" The girl sighed and stalled her answer by drinking some more tea, which ended up being a bad idea because it brought to the surface even more memories of Princess Celestia. Yeah," she let out a long exhale. "My mentor, you remind me a lot of her." Celestia hesitated, likely taking in her words and trying to work out what they meant. At the end, she nodded in understanding, although Sunset wasn't sure if she had realized the true nature about their parallel worlds. Not that she wanted to talk about that now, and it seemed the feeling was mutual. Is that why it's been so difficult for you to trust me?" Celestia asked instead. "I still don't trust you." The answer came out with more bite than Sunset intended. Defensive. She felt bad at the way Celestia's expression fell. "Not completely," she amended. "I suppose that's fair." The woman accepted her answer, although her voice was a little more quiet than usual. It's just, Princess Celestia and I, we didn't part on the best terms. Sunset sank on the couch, taking a few more sips from her tea as she contemplated the rays of light slipping past the curtains and illuminating the entire palace. Natural rays of light, not controlled by some powerful entity trying to wake her up. Sunset sighed. She supposed, despite everything, this Celestia was quite different from the princess, and not only when it came to the sheer scale of her power or authority. Last night had proved as much. Can I ask what happened yesterday? Celestia broke the silence after a while, looking at Sunset with concerned eyes. You never showed up to the parking lot. Sunset's stomach twisted and her lips pursed. She didn't even want to think about yesterday. She wanted to forget it happened at all. But she did owe Celestia some sort of explanation. I went to watch a rehearsal for the music showcase, Sunset started, trying to keep her voice even. Rainbow and her band, right? Celestia asked. I remember giving them permission to use the music classroom. Sunset nodded. Usually she'd stay after school anyways, doing her homework in the library, until Celestia and Luna would make their way home, after all extracurricular activities were finished. She liked this arrangement because it meant less time to spend on the sister's house. Yet, she hadn't been late to their parking lot appointment even once during the week she'd been living with them, until yesterday. Parking lot appointment, what are they talking about? Oh, I don't remember what that is. Parking lot appointment, what are they talking about? I don't know what they're talking about, I'm sorry. Did Rainbow hit you again? Celestia asked when Sunset kept silent for too long. Her eyebrows were furrowed with concern and anger on Sunset's behalf. What? No. Sunset found herself defending the girl for some unfathomable reason. We're friends. Although the last word came out more uncertain than she wanted, it seemed to satisfy Celestia, who adopted a relaxed expression once again. Then what happened? She asked. A lot of things. I low-key am reading this, I don't remember what happened. I might have to go back and look at the last chapter real quick. I can't lie. So I went back and tried to look at it, but I don't know what they mean with the parking lot appointment. I know what happened last is basically the music club. Flash went in. Flash wasn't didn't even acknowledge she was there and stuff, and they ponied up and she saw that she ran away because of that. But I don't know what the parking lot appointment thing is. She hadn't been late to the parking lot. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Then what happened? She asked. A lot of things. Sunset let out a shuddering breath, closing her eyes as if to stop the memories from entering her mind. But they did anyways. Flash and all the feelings that arose when she saw him. Pinky and her sincere offer of friendship. The rehearsal and how good it sounded at the end, and magic. The transformation. That moment was burned inside her eyelids now, even impossible to escape. To her credit, Celestia didn't press, but simply kept observing Sunset as she battled with her emotions. Truthfully, the girl didn't want to speak about it at all, but she could at least try to give her something. I suppose watching them play together made me realize just how much I don't belong. She hated how vulnerable her voice sounded at the admission, but she said it anyways. I ran off. I wasn't sure where I was going. I just wanted to escape, she sighed. By the time I decided to return, the sun was already below horizon. Despite the fact she had skipped over the crisis at the bridge and her close encounter with death, the confession still felt rather empty. The fact that Celestia kept quiet afterwards didn't help either. Sunset turned to look at her and found a very concerned expression on her face. She'd likely seen past her half-truths, but if she had, she chose not to press. Did you guys hear that vibration? Bro, do you guys hear that vibration? People were liking my fucking Instagram story. I'm gonna turn that off. I'm just glad you came back. Once again, she reiterated the sentiment she'd expressed multiple times the previous night. Please, next time, seek help if you're feeling overwhelmed. Her voice was earnest as a hesitant hand came to land on Sunset's shoulder. It doesn't have to be me, but your friends, or Luna, anyone really. You don't have to suffer alone. Sunset nodded. She couldn't fully believe her words. She was used to taking care of her own problems, but she supposed she could give it a try. She certainly didn't want to end up in the same situation as the previous day. She wasn't sure the universe would once again grant her a second chance. Where's Luna? She ended up asking, remembering that she hadn't seen her coming last night. To her surprise, Celestia grimaced. In the garage. was her rather sour answer, which puzzled Sunset. What could possibly be in the garage to grant such a reaction? Curiosity got the better of her and she stood up. I'll go talk to her. Celestia opened her mouth as she was about to protest, but seemed to think better of it and simply slumped. All right. The word came out reluctantly. But don't take too long. I'll go make lunch. Sunset nodded and left a little too quickly. If something Luna was doing in her garage could elicit such a reaction from Celestia, it definitely had to be good, and she couldn't wait to see it. At the very least, it could help keep at bay the grim memories and thoughts that still haunt her like shadows. Bro, I forgot how, negative this story is compared to the other one. Like, these people don't like each other in this story. It's crazy. Like, they don't want to be next. They don't even want to be, in the fucking... Like, Sunset doesn't even like them like Celestia yet, really. Unlike the other story. When Sunset arrived at the garage, she smelled a mix of grease and gasoline. Then she heard a gentle rhythmic clanky noises of metal against metal. Finally, she stopped when a motorcycle came to view. Actually, I see... Celestia doesn't like motorcycles in another story either, so... This is another common thing. It seemed to be an old model, at least judging by the many scratches on the paint that indicated heavy use. But Sunset decided she liked how slick and metallic the body looked, with its dark blue sheen and the black and white moon cutie mark at the back. It was beautiful. So this was what Celestia was uncomfortable with. Made sense it'd be so cool. Luna was crouched behind it, half hidden, so Sunset ran at the bike until she could see her, dressed with old clothes covered in black grease stains and hair tied up in a ponytail, trying to change one of the tires. Hi. Sunset wasn't sure what else to say, only that she wanted to know more. Luna paused what she was doing and looked up at Sunset surprised, then gave her a soft smile. You're finally awake, she remarked. You seemed pretty tired yesterday. I was, Sunset simply said, looking at the ground. My sister put the cover on you this time, by the way. Luna said in an almost teasing tone, but for the record, I don't think she's scheming anything. Sunset winced at the reminder of her own words, but decided to ignore them and instead focus on the motorcycle. What are you doing? She finally looked at the woman's eyes, genuinely curious about her answer. I'm changing a tire. I'm changing a tire. She pointed out the obvious, but if you mean in general, then I'm trying to repair this whole thing. Sunset stepped closer and gently placed a hand on the smooth, cold metal, wondering what it felt like to ride it. Is it broken? It looked fine to her untrained eye. No, she just needs some love. Luna smiled gently, patting the motorcycle as if it was a dog. I neglected her for too long, so it's only natural that I need to put in a little more work before I can use her again, right? Sunset shifted uncomfortably on her feet, feeling as though this was another of Luna's metaphors, but unable to fully grasp what it meant in the moment. Instead, she chose to deflect with another question. She? As far as she was aware, motorized vehicles didn't have a gender. Luna nodded. I named her Sunset, meet Nightmare Moon. Sunset's eyes widened and her breath hitched, recognizing the name. Nightmare Moon? She repeated with utter disbelief. I was an edgy teen, Luna shrugged. I rode this girl all around the country, from Manhattan to San Francisco, and everything in between. A nostalgic look appeared in her face. I attended tons of music festivals, slept on shady motels, and even joined a biker gang. Sunset raised an eyebrow. She couldn't imagine this older woman, so kind and wise and composed, doing any of that, but she had to admit it sounded pretty cool. Was it when you ran away? She couldn't help but asking. Most of it, yes, Luna nodded. But even after I came back, I sometimes took my sister to music festivals on my bike. She chuckled. She always insisted she'd hated it, but I could see right through her. Celestia riding a motorcycle? Now Sunset would pay good money to see that. More so, she would pay good money to ride on it herself, if Luna let her. Do you need help? She asked, figuring it'd be easier to convince the adult to let her ride it later, if she first aided on the repair. Luna looked up for a moment. Since Sunset was convinced she saw right through her little helpful act, but she nodded anyway and made space for Sunset to crouch next to the wheel. Loosen up the bolts, she instructed, giving her a wrench and then teaching her how to use it. Once Sunset had gotten the hang of it, however, Luna decided to break the silence by engaging in conversation, much to her dismay. You know, my sister was pretty worried about you yesterday. I thought she'd have a panic attack. Sunset pursed her lips and kept working on loosening the bolts, trying to ignore the fresh wave of guilt that hit her stomach like a tidal wave. Sorry, she muttered, but in the corner of her eye she could see Luna shaking her head in response. Don't apologize, she said firmly. I would just like you to reflect on why you ran away, and more importantly, why you came back. Sunset paused what she was doing and briefly glanced at the woman with a questioning look. Why would it matter why she came back? Wasn't the important thing that she did? Luna smiled, as if reading her mind, and answered the unspoken question. After I reconciled with my sister, I often would get the urge to run away again, she explained, but then I remembered the reason why I came back, how much I missed her, and how much I loved her, and that thought would make me stay. Sunset pursed her lips and continued twisting the bolts, with even more focus than before, as if to make them pay for making her have this uncomfortable conversation. I don't have anything like that, she simply said. But you still came back for a reason. An affirmation, not a question. Sometimes it was a little unnerving just how perceptive Luna could be. But it was also comforting in a way, knowing she didn't have to say anything to be understood. Still, Sunset took a deep breath and looked back to the memories of the bridge. How she had been so close to jumping, thinking she had no place in any world, I don't know why I started, until Twilight appeared, like a light in the dark, a literal lifeline thrown at her by fate itself. She sighed. Maybe Luna could help her make sense of it all. I saw Twilight, she confessed. Didn't she go back to her world? The woman expectantly asked the obvious question. Sunset simply nodded, but didn't bother to elaborate. To her credit, Luna didn't press on the subject either. And what did seeing her make you feel? Luna shrugged, unsure. It was like a sign or something, she sighed, realizing how ridiculous she sounded. I don't know, maybe I should contact her, but... The words died in her throat, unable to materialize. She just made a face and then went back to work instead. But... Luna prompted after the silence stretched far too long. But... Sunset spoke before she could stop herself. I don't know. She's just perfect. She spat the word like it burned, her grip tightening on the wrench. She's everything I could be. She's everything I couldn't be. And I hate her for that. Luna didn't say anything uncomfortable for an uncomfortable amount of time, choosing to simply stare at Sunset like she was a puzzle that she was trying to solve in her mind. Sounds like me, like you've put her on an impossibly high pedestal, and now you're resenting her for being there. The words hit Sunset like an arrow to a bullseye. She tensed, defensive. What? No, I mean, she's a princess. An alicorn, she's a girl. Luna interrupted her passionate rant. She's a person, just like all of us. She has flaws. The woman paused, giving Sunset a pointed look. Maybe if you got to know her better, you'd realize she's not the embodiment of perfection that you seem to think she is. Sunset frowned, glaring at the half-unscrewed wheel as if it was... Sorry. Sunset frowned, glaring at the half-unscrewed wheel as if it was responsible for everything that aggravated her. Of course not. She's just a stupid filly who got lucky. The older woman hummed in response, clearly not buying Sunset's defensive remark. Then what's so bad about getting to know her? Sunset sighed tiredly. Nothing, I'm scared, okay? She gritted her teeth as if wanting to take back those words. She hadn't intended to make such a confession. Of Twilight? Luna raised an eyebrow. Of getting to know her and realizing that she is indeed better than me in every way. Finally, she loosened up the last bolt and turned towards Luna with a tired look. Better? The woman shook her head. According to who? A smile appeared in her lips. I thought we discussed already about the dangers of defining yourself by someone else's standards. Sunset slumped, put the tool away, and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Yeah, they'd talked about this before, but she supposed she hadn't quite internalized the lesson. Still, Luna didn't seem to hold it against her. Come on, she grabbed the tire. Help me get it off. Luna did as instructed and was thankful when the conversation moved back towards motorcycles and proper maintenance, and away from her personal life and into her insecurities. Still, the thoughts kept nagging at the back of her mind like a buzzing mosquito, looking for the right moment to strike. After helping Luna change both tires and watching her check the oil levels, the two of them were called for lunch. Surprisingly, lunch was a rather calm affair, even when Luna purposely mentioned the bike and the fact Sunset was helping her. It was obvious the comment made Celeste uncomfortable, but she chose to say nothing, probably to preserve the fragile newfound peace. Once her stomach was full, Sunset excused herself under the pretense of homework. In truth, she had something far more exhausting awaiting her: the journal. She decided she would write to Twilight, if nothing else just to prove she wasn't afraid, and to see if that opportune apparition on the bridge had really been Fate's way of telling her to reach out to the aggravating princess. But sitting at her desk, staring at the closed journal, the clock ticking, the clock's, what, I just said the talk click, what did I just, bro, what? With the, okay, let me just, but sitting at her desk, staring at the closed journal, with the clock ticking steadily in the silence, all that confidence drained away. The book suddenly seemed heavier and more treacherous than a time bomb. Her fingers traced the sun symbol on the leather cover. It felt warm and rough, and she half expected the fiery rays to burn her fingers, as ridiculous as that thought was, but she refused to pull away. What was the worst that could happen, honestly? That Sunset wouldn't answer? Big deal. She didn't even want to talk to her. Not really. They weren't friends. Sunset was just another responsibility that Celeste had shoved into her students' inexperienced hooves. She remembered the crater, the rubble, Twilight's hand reaching for hers, steady, warm, and possibly gentle, that smile, that promise that her friends would teach her about friendship. The memory hurt, like pressing on a bruise that she couldn't stop touching. So perfect, so nice, so fake. Because who could forgive her that easily? Who could look at her and still smile like that? Worse than overt cruelty was false kindness, that silent pity, that concealed judgment. But well, this was just a book, wasn't it? Even if Twilight answered with that overly polite tone, Sunset supposed it'd be easier to call her bullshit over text. Cathartic, even. Yeah, she'd do it. She'd had to. Otherwise, it'd keep gnawing at the back of her mind. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen. It wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to care this much. Just a stupid book. Just paper and ink and memories she'd rather forget. Come on, she whispered to herself, jaw tight. Just right. She opened the journal, pages fluttering like a breath she couldn't catch. She flipped to a blank one, then pressed the pen down until the tip almost pierced the paper, until her knuckles ached. Two crooked, hesitant words bled into the page. Hey, princess. Alright, that's end of that. Here's the note. Thank you so much for reading. Sorry for the delay. I just wanted to have the next arc finished before I started posting again. I didn't finish, but I only have a couple of chapters to go, so I figured I wouldn't make you wait any longer. Also, I wrote a one-shot about the Dazzling, so you want to check it out. I do want to, honestly. I haven't read a story about Dazzlings yet. And yeah, I think last time I read a story, my voice wasn't like that expressive really. I kind of just read the book. Because I guess I kind of forgot, I forgot that you can also have like a voice when reading narration. You don't just have to just like read through it like really quickly like I've been doing. What do I have to say? And yeah, I'm kind of not used to this wise, quiet, proverb kind of Luna. I haven't read a Luna like the last Luna was like the childish at heart kind of Luna I grew to love. But now we're back to the wise fortune cookie Luna, which is also good. And I like how she has the backstory with the bikers and stuff. Because like in the last story, I guess I kind of didn't have like the thing where Luna disappeared for a while. Because like I know in like the show, Luna like was gone for like thousands of years or something. Where she was like in the moon or something, I don't know. But yeah, and the parallel to that in the story was her in the biker gang, but I don't think there's like a parallel to that in the Skies of Our Past story. So I like this kind of interpretation of her character, really. But that's really, I'm only gonna read that chapter for now. Yeah, probably gonna make this video shorter too. I'm probably just gonna have like shorter, 30-minute, hour-long video for this story, because I know it's gonna keep going on anyway. It's not done, so like there's no reason for me to like read like a ton of chapters like I do with the other story, because I know that story's done already. So I know that like each part is gonna be like around 4 hours, 5 hours long. But for this, I don't know how long it's gonna go on, so I guess I'll read like three or four chapters each video for this one. towards like an hour 30 minutes. So yeah.
Who is this? Oh, hey, princess. Twilight stared at the yellowed paper, caught in her lamp's warm light that made the ink shimmer faintly. 2 words. It had only 2 words written on stiff handwriting. Yet, it said a lot. The fact that from her perspective, Sunset hadn't written her at all in nearly 2 months. The way she addressed her by title, how she'd chosen to start the conversation on a blank page, despite still having space on the previous one. It all pointed towards Sunset being nervous about this whole thing. Then again, Twilight couldn't blame her. She was nervous too. She'd been staring at the book for almost 15 minutes now, for crying out loud. When Princess Celestia gave her this journal, Twilight had been very reluctant to take it. Normally, she wasn't the one to question the princess, but this felt too personal. Even after Princess Celestia insisted that it was for Sunset's own good, and that she herself couldn't do anything for her former student anymore, Twilight still couldn't help thinking that, were she on Sunset's hooves, or shoes, she was supposed to, she would have wanted to speak to Princess Celestia directly. But alas, there was no convincing the princess, and now here she was, staring at the 2 words and trying to come up with something to say in response. She hadn't written before, as per Princess Celestia's advice. She told her that Sunset didn't respond well to anything she perceived as a threat to her autonomy, and that it was better to let her come to her at her own terms. I don't know what that sound was. Now she wished she had ignored the advice, because what was she supposed to do with these 2 words? One wrong line, one careless phrase, and she risked closing the door before it even opened. A draft from an open window rustled the pages of a nearby tome. Twilight flinched, half expecting the sound to be an answer. Simply saying hi didn't exactly seem appropriate, considering everything that happened when they last saw each other. Explaining their arrangement with Princess Celestia? No, the princess had already done that. Asking her if she had learned anything about friendship yet? But was she her teacher? Twilight groaned and rested her face against her desk. Shouldn't she know what to do? Weren't alicorn princesses supposed to be wise and kind and all-knowing? She was starting to learn that no, being a princess and being an alicorn definitely hadn't changed her at all. Something that was both relieving and frustrating, considering the extra pressure she now had. Still, agonizing over 2 words on the page was a new low, even for her. So taking a few breaths like Cadence taught her, she used her magic to grab a quill and a normal piece of parchment and wrote on it instead, just in case she needed to make revisions before actually sending the message. Dear Sunset Shimmer. Sunset would have never admitted it, not in a million years, but she was getting increasingly anxious. As she had laid on her bed, throwing stress balls towards the ceiling and catching it, trying to make up patterns on the perfectly smooth cement, and fighting the urge to look at the book once again. So, it had been almost an hour at this point. What did it matter? Twilight was a stupid princess with a lot of responsibilities, no doubt. She wasn't ignoring her, right? Maybe she hadn't even seen the message. Sighing, Sunset wished her book had a read feature, like human messaging apps. Then again, why should she care? That's right, she didn't, not at all. Not in the slightest. She didn't even like Twilight. She wasn't sure why she even wrote to her, and now she wished she could take back those stupid words. The 2 she wrote down. Suddenly, a buzzing sound made her jump out of her skin, and she ended up falling to the floor in surprise. Only when the shock passed did she realize that it was the sign she'd been waiting for. The book on top of her desk was now glowing and vibrating. Sunset got up from the floor and dusted herself off. Then she sat at her desk, flinching as the setting sun briefly blinded her through the window, and quickly opened the book at the bookmarked page, seeing how a wall of text had suddenly appeared. Too much text and too neat to have been written all in the time it took her to open the book. Had Twilight used a copying spell? Had she written it on a separate piece of paper first just to make sure she'd get it perfect? Ugh, typical. Sunset rolled her eyes. Still, her palms were sweaty and her heart was pounding when she started reading. Sunset Shimmer, it's so nice to finally hear from you. Please, you could just call me Twilight. There's no need to be so formal. I want to be your friend. Friend. Yeah, right, as if. Sunset was already hating the preppy, optimistic tone Twilight had used. It felt fake. Tell me, how have you been? How's the human world treating you? I hope things have been easier for you than they've been for me. It's been hectic here these past 2 months. 2 months? Sunset's eyes opened wide, surprised. Right. She'd nearly forgotten about the time difference between the two worlds. Still, from her perspective, not even 3 weeks had passed. It was a bit weird. How are the others, by the way? Please tell them I said hi. I hope they're teaching you about friendship, just like they promised. But regardless, I hope you found love and acceptance on your side of the mirror. Despite herself, Sunset's mind immediately conjured up images of the girls and of Celestia and Luna as she read the excerpt. She sighed. She still wasn't sure she had actually found that, not yet, but at least she wasn't completely alone, she supposed. The thought made her chest tighten up more than expected. Speaking of which, I'd like to get to know you better, the real you. Not the villain who stole my crown, but the brilliant unicorn who understands magic on a level few others do. Maybe we could talk about magic theory sometime. I really get to do that anymore, and I bet you don't either. In any case, I'm always here for whatever you might need, and I'll always try to lend a hoof. No pressure, no judgment. Just my sincere offer of friendship. Twilight Sparkle. Sunset made a face. The letter was too neat, too careful, even for a princess. Almost like she'd rewritten it a dozen times before sending it. Why? Would it kill her to have even a comma out of place? Most importantly, last time they'd seen each other, the princess had blasted Sunset's demon form into a crater, and now she was offering friendship? She wanted to discuss magic like they were just two normal scholars? What a joke. She couldn't be serious, right? Right? Her memories flashed to the awkward earnest girl she met in Canterlot High. Not the eloquent princess she'd stolen from, but the girl who had somehow managed to rally the entire school behind her in just one day, despite being so awkward in her attempts to act like a human. Even back then, she'd seen why her fellow classmates had decided so quickly to change their perception of her, despite Sunset's best efforts. Twilight was unapologetically positive, completely honest, and she clearly practiced what she preached. There was no pretense when it came to her, no falseness, no manipulative scheme hidden behind a practiced restraint. No. As much as Sunset would like to dismiss the princess' words as empty and false, she knew deep down that Twilight just wasn't like that at all. The thought made her heart skip a beat. Still, it wasn't difficult to accept that someone like her would so overtly offer her friendship to Sunset just like that. After all, they had literally been at each other's throats just before they parted ways. Maybe Twilight was just trying to compensate. Did she feel guilty about leaving Sunset stranded in the human world? Did she pity her? Sunset's stomach twisted. The thought was more unbearable than outright deception. Still, she decided to stop making a fool of herself and just write. So with her hands shaking more than she liked to admit, she took a deep breath and pressed the pen to the sunlit paper. Did you really have to write a whole formal letter? The complaint was written before Sunset could stop herself. Truthfully, she didn't actually mind the long text she received, or the format, but it certainly made things a bit awkward. She waited a few moments, twirling her pen anxiously with no reply. She briefly wondered if the princess was drafting yet another long-winded letter in response to her message, but thankfully, just when she had started anxiously bouncing her leg, new words appeared on the page. Sorry, that's how I usually communicate with Princess Celestia. Sunset sighed, of course. She knew the feeling. She'd herself written dozens of letters like that once upon a time. Well, stop it, she answered. You're just making things awkward. Sorry. The repeated apology came back almost immediately, and Sunset almost felt bad about it, as if she had accidentally stepped on a puppy's tail. It's fine. Her reassurance was written almost automatically. Honestly, this is new for me too. Truthfully, she only ever used this journal to report the results of her field missions to Celestia, and the human equivalent. That stupid black thing she had in her backpack still remained unused. However, she learned enough from watching Snips and Snails text each other to know that she was now using this book like a messaging app. Short, casual, instant. So, the hesitant word appeared with slightly smeared ink. What made you decide to reach out, if you don't mind me asking? Truthfully, Sunset should have anticipated the question, but she found herself realizing that she had no answer. None that she was comfortable giving anyways. She slumped a little and bit her pen, thinking carefully. Magic. Magic? The surprised response from the princess came back almost immediately. What about it? There's magic here now. What followed was a long pause in their conversation. So long that if Sunset didn't know any better, she'd think Twilight had walked away from the book entirely. But no. Knowing the princess, she was probably freaking out and frantically trying to do some research on the matter, regardless of the fact that Sunset doubted such information existed anywhere in Equestria. She could almost see her now, pacing, muttering under her breath, pulling 3 books at once from the shelves. It was unsettling, how easily she could picture it, almost as if she had watched her doing research for an entire evening and then edited a video about it. Oh wait, she had. Sunset sighed, pushing back those memories. Princess, come back, it's no big deal. Not a big deal? The messy big letters were barely recognizable as the princess's handwriting. Sunset Shimmer, you're telling me that we somehow brought magic into the previously magicless dimension. How is that not a big deal? Because as far as I know, only your friends have it, Sunset answered promptly but calmly, and for some reason, it only briefly manifested yesterday during band practice. There's another pause, shorter this time, as Twilight no doubt tried to process every implication. Still, Sunset could perfectly imagine her, brows furrowed and leaning intently towards the book. We don't know the effect that magic could have in the human world. That's true. Sunset bit her pen again, thinking for a moment longer than necessary. Honestly, my hypothesis is that part of your crown's magic remained here, but I don't know why or what triggers it. You're probably right, Twilight conceded. After all, my crown was the element of magic. Was? Sunset raised an eyebrow at the phrasing. Long story. The response was almost immediate and dismissive. Sunset knew better than to press, and truthfully she didn't care. Point is, we should study this phenomenon. It'd be ideal if we could fully understand it before the portal opens again. We? Oh, sorry, I read it wrong. Point is, we should study this phenomenon. It'd be ideal if we could fully understand it before the portal opens again. We? Sunset frowned at the implication. Oh, well, of course. The words were far more preppy and enthusiastic than Sunset could handle. She groaned, pressing her forehead against the desk. I can do research here and discuss my theories with you, as well as ways to test them. But you're in the human world, so it'll really be up to you, ultimately, to uncover the truth. Ugh, of course. She'd make it a team effort. Sunset should have thought about that before telling her about magic at all. Then again, given that the alternative was opening up about her struggles, there wasn't really an option, was there? Do you really think you'll find anything about this world in Canterlot's dusty library? Truth be told, the only reason Sunset knew about this world was because she'd snuck into the restricted section. But even if Twilight went there, most books on the subject just vaguely mention the mirror. And the one book that explained the human world was... okay, sorry, it's a typo. The one book that explained what the human world... Oh, no, never mind, it's not a typo, I just read it. And the one book that explained what the human world was didn't have anything in it but the both of them didn't already know. I'll go to the old sister's cradle in Everfree Forest. Twilight's answer came, surprising Sunset. I've been trying to restore and classify the books there anyways. Hopefully one will have something. That actually wasn't a bad idea. Sunset hesitated, then nodded slightly. Personally, she had never been to that castle, but if it had an old library with ancient books owned by the princesses, then she supposed it was worth a shot. Fine, you do that. Sunset agreed. Tell me if you find anything. No problem. The princess's academic drive was palpable through the pages. And you must observe this magic in the meantime. It'll be helpful if you could provide me with a detailed description of how it manifests, as well as the circumstances. Sunset grimaced, curling her fingers around the pen a little too tightly. She really didn't want to recall what had happened at the rehearsal. And she certainly didn't want to see it again either. Once again, she found herself regretting her decision to even bring it up. They just pony up when they play music, that's all, she answered, the words clipped and defensive. I said detailed description. Twilight's words appeared, firm yet unmistakably earnest. It'll be helpful for both of us to get a better idea what's going on. Sunset let her head rest on one of her hands as she stared at the words. Twilight wouldn't relent, would she? The sound of a groan was almost involuntary, carrying more exasperation than she intended. And do keep me informed if you see any more signs of magic, anything at all, the princess added after a pause. Sunset's mind immediately went to her demonic transformation that still happened rather randomly. She pursed her lips. Yeah, she definitely wasn't telling Twilight that. Sure, she lied. Perfect. The princess' response came through, happy and underwear. Oh, I'm so excited. The possibility to study a magic in an entirely different world. Sunset, you must be over the moon about this, right? I know I'd be. Sunset rolled her eyes. Twilight's enthusiasm was annoying, really. It was like watching a unicorn foal, discovering. Damn, bro! Shit, now I gotta edit this shit. It was like watching a unicorn foal discovering magic for the first time. Weren't princesses supposed to be wise and composed? Still, she could already imagine her goofy smile and sparkling eyes. Yet, Sunset didn't really share her enthusiasm. Perhaps once upon a time she would have, but she long since stopped being the young filly that only cared about learning. In fact, she couldn't quite recall the last time she studied magic. Not to achieve a concrete goal, but just for the sake of it. I should go probably do my homework. Sunset deflected. You go do whatever princesses do. Alright. The hasty words appeared on the page, radiating with excitement in the way they were drawn. But do keep me informed. And please, don't hesitate to write whenever you want, even if it's just a talk, okay? Okay. Truthfully, Sunset wasn't planning on actually sharing anything more than necessary with the bothersome Alicorn, but she supposed she could at least write to her about the magic. Great, see you soon. I hope. See you. She hesitated slightly, her pen hovering above the paper. Sunset's chest tightened a little. With a small, almost imperceptible sigh, she pressed the pen to the paper, carefully spelling out the name of her former rival. Twilight. Okay, I don't know if that means she's gonna talk to her more. That's the end of the chapter. I don't know if that means she wants to say something extra, but the note is, let this shipping begin, lol. Even if you already know the outcome, man, sometimes I feel bad for everything I put Sunset through, just a little. Anyways, I hope you like this more lighthearted chapter. Let me know what you think. I like how this is lighthearted. This is like the scale. I'm about to get some good old negativity that's happened. I can feel it. Okay, I'm probably gonna stop the recording. Alright, chapter 17, Closure. Canterlot's library was silent, but Sunset's frustration made it feel anything but. She'd scoured book after book on magic, yet still found nothing. With a sigh, she turned to the tall Alicorn beside her. Princess Celestia, why isn't there anything about how to use harmonic magic? The princess smiled and put down her book, giving Sunset her undivided attention. I think you already know the answer, my dear student. Sunset groaned. Typical, always cryptic, never direct. Can we skip straight to the point? Celestia chuckled and turned towards Sunset. Patience. She placed her hoof on Sunset's chest. To use harmonic magic, you must feel it inside of you. It's not something any book can teach you. Sunset pursed her lips. It wasn't the answer she expected nor wanted, but at least it was more direct than the princess's usual responses. So she'd take it as a win. How will it feel? Celestia rested her hoof under her chin, thinking carefully. After a few seconds, she opened her mouth to speak, then a buzzing sound woke Sunset up abruptly. Her heart started pounding in her ears and her body tensed up at the sudden interruption. She scrunched up her eyes and felt around for her phone, figuring the alarm was the source of her discomfort. Except, her hand only met air. Trying again, she scooted a little to the right, where the buzzing sound was coming from, and reached off from her bed towards where the sound was coming from. It was too late when she suddenly realized she'd gotten too close to the edge. Sunset fell from her bed and hit the ground with a thud. She groaned sleepily and sat up, thankful that she didn't hit her head. She'd been doing this a lot lately. The perks of suddenly having a proper bed after years of sleeping on a mattress, she supposed. Sighing and rubbing the sleep out of her eyes, she stood up and searched for the source of her annoyance. There it was, on her desk, glowing and vibrating. The magical journal. Rolling her eyes, she opened it and looked at the latest message as she had sat down on her bed. Good afternoon, how have you been? Hey, it's been quite a few days since we talked, so... Oh, okay, I did the voices wrong. Good afternoon, how have you been? Hey, it's been quite a few days since we talked, so I was just wondering if you've had time to research the magic in the human world yet. No pressure, though. Sunset grabbed her phone and checked the time. 6:34 a.m. Great, amazing, fantastic. She groaned, half tempted to toss the book across the room and go back to sleep. But school would come soon anyway, so it'd be no use. Sighing, she grabbed a pen. You know it's 6 a.m., right? She wrote. Also, it's not even been 2 days for me. Sorry. Twilight's immediate apology came as expected. I still can't figure out the time flow difference between our worlds. We should establish that soon, or else you'll end up writing me way too often. Sunset answered, shuddering at the thought of constantly getting messages from the overeager princess. Uh, Good idea. Write me at 7 a.m. exactly, then 7 p.m. That should help me get a better idea of our time difference. Sure. Sunset yawned, still sleepy. Oh, and it's just Monday for me, by the way. Haven't had the chance to see the girls yet, or their magic. I see, that's alright, Twilight assured her. Sorry for getting so impatient. It's fine, she sighed. Truthfully, she would have been more annoyed if she wasn't so sleepy. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, she would have been annoyed, okay. Or so she told herself. I should get ready for school, though. Oh, I won't keep you waiting then. Twilight's enthusiasm at the word school was palpable. Sunset rolled her eyes. Have fun. I won't, but thanks. At least try, please. We'll see. Sunset closed the book, thankful when it didn't vibrate again, and then tossed it in her backpack. Truthfully, she still had a few minutes to spare before she had to get ready for school, but she was already awake, so she might as well. Remembering to write Princess Twilight exactly at 7 a.m., she finished her usual routine and then headed downstairs, where Celestia was already waiting for her. After a sleepy greeting and a silently accepting her packed breakfast, Sunset got into the car and tried to relax, hoping for a few more minutes of sleep. Unfortunately, Celestia had other plans. So, she started the conversation after having driven just a few moments of silence. Will you attend your friend's band rehearsal today as well? Sunset couldn't help but notice how tightly Celestia gripped the wheel, her gaze flitting nervously towards her. No doubt this was about the incident on Friday. The memory made Sunset's stomach turn painfully, but she forced herself to respond anyway. Unfortunately, she sighed. Celestia pursed her lips but said nothing in response, as if thinking carefully of her answer. The silence stretched for a beat longer than necessary, so long that Sunset was starting to think that she wouldn't say anything after all, but then she finally opened her mouth again. If anything happens, I'll be in my office, all right? She casted a brief worried glance at the girl. Please, seek help instead of running away. Sunset took a deep breath. A few days ago, she would have hated the worried tone and seen it as condescending, but now she knew Celestia was actually concerned, and truthfully, she didn't want to give her any more trouble than she already had. I will, she whispered, her throat tight as she forced herself to speak. Damn, we're not even halfway through this shit yet. Thank you. Celestia let out a sigh of relief, her body noticeably relaxing as she did. But, you don't have to participate in this showcase if it really makes you so uncomfortable. Guilt was written all over her face as she spoke. I know you said you were just going to watch, but that's not it. Sunset interrupted her firmly. Oh. Celestia blinked, seemingly recalibrating her previous assumptions before speaking again. Then what is it? She asked, raising an eyebrow at Sunset as the car came to a stop for a red light. The girl pursed her lips, taking a moment to think about why she was so anxious about the rehearsal. It wasn't because of the girls. She'd been getting along with them just fine lately. It was partially because of the magic, which could potentially trigger the same extreme reaction in her as last time. And it was also partially because of Flash. She ended up saying something that wasn't a complete lie, but also wouldn't have her admit her worst feelings of inadequacy. He showed up there last time. Sunset looked out the window, avoiding Celeste's gaze. The words left a bitter taste in her mouth, and her palms got sweaty at the thought of seeing him again, being reminded of the person she used to be. A tense silence stretched between them before Celestia spoke cautiously. I see, he's your, my ex, yes. Sunset groaned, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. I would assume you didn't break up on good terms. The old woman asked, The old woman asked awkwardly. You could say that. Celestia nodded and waited as the light turned green, fingers strumming lightly on the steering wheel. Then she asked, Did you talk to him on Friday? No, I don't exist for him anymore. The bitterness in her voice surprised Sunset. Wait, what? Oh, I guess she surprised herself. Truth be told, she hadn't thought about him since she last saw him, but the memories now made her whole body react with vivid discomfort. The woman pursed her lips, silent for a moment. Maybe you should try, she said hesitantly. I know it might be awkward or scary, but leaving it unresolved is way worse.
Finally, Sunset's gaze returned towards Celestia, surprised by the impromptu advice. She raised an eyebrow. Have you ever... She left the question hanging. Perhaps it was because of her similarities to Princess Celestia, but Sunset couldn't imagine this woman being in a romantic relationship with anyone. A long time ago, she said quietly, her gaze hardening. It didn't end well. I see. Sunset was curious. She didn't mean to pry, but wasn't it just natural for her to ask? What happened? He died. The word struck Sunset unexpectedly, stirring a hollow ache in her chest. It wasn't her loss, but she understood the weight of never having a chance to make things right, and somehow that understanding felt like a small responsibility landing on her shoulders. She winced. I'm sorry. It's fine, Celestia hesitated, voice wavering slightly and tightening her grip on the steering wheel. We had a fight, and I never had the chance to make things right, she sighed. But even before the bad news, I always wanted to talk things out and get some closure. Celestia's pointed glance made Sunset understand immediately. I'll think about it, Sunset said softly, the weight of the conversation settling on her. This time, it just wasn't about herself and her shame. It was about closure. For her, but also for Flash. About being able to exist in the same school without spiraling every time she saw him. As Sunset stared off at the familiar streets, reflecting on the conversation in silence, she realized this had been the first civil talk she had had with the principal on their way to school. Surprisingly, despite the heavy subject they discussed, the thought lifted off the tension onto her shoulders ever so slightly. As they pulled up to the school, Sunset couldn't help feeling the tiniest bit of hope inside her chest. Sunset walked down the hallway towards her classroom, avoiding the many people who blocked her way, and sighing when she got to dodge a paper airplane. Thankfully, she'd arrived early that day, and so she didn't have to hurry. Perhaps she'd even have the time to doodle on her notebook before the teacher arrived. It'd been a while since she last done that. She was just thinking about that when she suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. In front of her classroom were 5 very familiar pairs of eyes, and they all noticed her instantly. Sunset Shimmer! She heard Pinkie Pie's excited yell before she felt a pair of surprisingly strong arms hug her in her middle section, rendering her unable to breathe. Pinkie Pie. She put her hands on the girl's shoulders and tried pushing her away to no avail. I can't breathe. Finally, Pinkie Pie pulled away and gave her a bright smile. I'm just glad you're here, she exclaimed, so loud that Sunset was sure everyone in the school heard her. She sighed. Classic Pinkie Pie. We were so worried about you, darling. Rarity approached her, graceful, composed, the very opposite of Pinkie's chaos. Yeah. Rainbow Dash suddenly put her arm around Sunset's shoulders and gave her a teasing smile. You really gotta stop running away like that. Otherwise, I'll start thinking you're trying to beat my record. She let out a rather loud burst of laughter and lightly punched Sunset's shoulder in a playful manner. Sunset rolled her eyes and shook her head. You literally grew pony ears and wings. I think it was a reasonable reaction, she deadpanned. Still, Applejack approached her and took off her hat, placing it on her chest as she spoke. I'm sorry I put you in the spotlight like that. Her eyes were sincere and remorseful. Should have realized it'd be a delicate subject for you. It's fine, really, she asserted them, tense. I'm fine. Are you sure? Fluttershy asked softly. You don't have to join us in practice if you don't want to. We understand. No, really, it's... Sunset sighed, finally pulling away from the rainbow and darting her eyes across all 5 girls. I had time to process everything, and I think... She took a deep breath. I want to see it again. Truthfully, she didn't actually want to see it, but she had to if she wanted to make the detailed report Twilight wanted. If you're absolutely sure, darling, Verity smiled uncertainly, while Fluttershy nodded timidly. We wouldn't be so worried if we at least had your phone number, Rainbow spoke. That way, even if you ran off, we can always call you. I don't. Sunset was about to say she didn't even have a phone, but she stopped herself, realizing that she actually did now. However, she wasn't sure she wanted to give her number to the girls. Found it! Pinkie suddenly had Sunset's phone in her hand, and not only that, she had somehow unlocked it. What? Sunset glanced back and saw her backpack was tightly closed. How had Pinkie... Done. She handed the phone back to Sunset like nothing ever happened, then pulled out her own. I added all our contacts, she explained. and I added you to our group chat. Sunset frowned. I keep my phone in silent mode. I do too, Applejack chuckled. But please, make sure to pick up if there's another incident, alright? Sunset hesitated, then sighed as she put her phone back where it belonged. I'll try. She conceded at last, after noticing the subtly worried expression on all their faces. But I won't promise anything. Good enough for me, Rainbow shrugged nonchalantly. Meanwhile, the other girls promptly nodded in approval. Just then, the bell rang and Sunset used it as an excuse to finally get into her classroom and away from them. Still, as she sat down in her usual place near the back, she couldn't help feeling a little overwhelmed as the thought slowly crept in her mind. They had been worried about her. They still were. It didn't feel fake. The thought made her uncomfortable, but in a complicated way. On one hand, she didn't need their worry, and it felt slightly patronizing. On the other hand, just a couple of days ago, she felt like she had nothing. Like no one would even care if she were just to disappear from this world. Yet here were those girls, worried despite not knowing the full extent of what happened. Sunset sighed as she absent-mindedly doodled on her notebook. It felt sincere, it felt real, it felt good. She had to admit as much, even if she wasn't fully comfortable with it. She was so immersed in her thoughts that she didn't even notice when the teacher had arrived until he began, the lesson with a rather commanding voice. Only then did Sunset take a moment to actually look at the page in front of her and realize what she had drawn. A beautiful flaming phoenix, rising from a pile of ashes. Where's my tab? Oh, there it is. As luck would have it, Sunset arrived at the music classroom before the other girls, so she decided to wait outside, leaning against a nearby wall. She crossed her arms over her chest and tapped her foot impatiently before glancing at the clock. They should be here already. What was taking them so long? It's not like she wanted to listen to their stupid music, but waiting was making her even more anxious, and she hated that. Her stomach twisted just thinking about what would happen once they started playing. The last time she'd seen their magic during a rehearsal, it had sent her spiraling. Images of wings and light and laughter had felt like a punch in the gut, a reminder of everything she wasn't. She'd sworn she'd never let herself fall apart like that again, but even thinking about it was already pulling her dangerously close to that edge. But this wasn't her. Not this time. Princess Twilight had asked her to observe how the magic worked, to document it for her next report. And she wasn't about to fail in front of that stupid alicorn. What would the princess think of her? That she was a coward? A failure? No. If she had to grit her teeth and stand through that another glowing, friendship-fueled concert, then so be it. She took a deep breath, straightening her jacket as if it could hold her nerves in place. Okay, she muttered under her breath. Just go in, take notes, don't freak out. Easy. Her gaze flicked towards the hallway and she frowned. And maybe don't run into Flash, she added quietly. The last thing she needed right now was that conversation. Just then, the door to the music room opened, making Sunset flinch. She didn't know anyone was inside. Turning to look at the people exiting from it, her heart dropped when she recognized Flash's friends, followed by the boy in question. Her whole body tensed up. Even though none of them gazed in her direction, her mind was instantly flooded with the memories of playing music with them, of getting their recognition and playing game nights, in pizza boxes. A simpler time that she ruined completely. And Flash, no wonder the boy ignored her so pointedly, considering the things that had ended between them. So yeah, that Loki, like those memories were like, you're a kid, you used to play video games, you just invite your friends over to play video games and just be pizza, just Wingstop and stuff that I miss. I don't miss him. I Loki don't miss shit, but anyway. It had been during one of their weekend dates. Sunset was gnawing at her burger, looking distractedly out of the window. They had barely said anything to each other up until that point, and Sunset intended to keep it that way. She was far more than preoccupied, going over her plan to sneak into the castle in just a few weeks, and then fantasizing about how she'd make Celestia and all of Equestria bow before her. As such, she was quite irritated when Flash's voice interrupted her fantasy just as she was about to exile the princess. Sunset? He asked, nervous, and when her murderous glare landed on him, the boy shrank slightly on his chair. There's something I wanted to tell you. It better be important, she said, barely keeping her voice from being fully hostile, before taking a sip from her milkshake. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes as if bracing himself. When he opened them again, he had a determined look on his face. I want to break up with you, he said at last, a little too quickly. Silence rang for a few moments as Sunset processed his words.
He wanted to break up with her, but she had tried to be a good girlfriend, really. Even if she wasn't into it, she'd constantly gone on dates with him every weekend, even more often during school breaks, mainly to get a free meal out of the deal, but still. And she'd even reciprocated any displays of affection he initiated, as long as it wasn't public. What else could he want? Was this just some elaborate ploy to make her agree to play video games with his friends? Or maybe even to have sex with him again? Whatever the case, she wasn't falling for it. "You're breaking up with me?" she scoffed. "Sure, Flash." A mocking smile appeared on her face as she kept drinking the milkshake. The boy frowned, displeased by her answer. I'm serious, Sunset," he spoke, his voice unwavering. "I don't like the person you've become. And most importantly, I don't like what it says about me that I'm still dating you despite everything." Sunset rolled her eyes. So he wanted to play hard to get. She wasn't in the mood for games and riddles. "If this is about me refusing to have sex again, you could just say so," she deadpanned. "Maybe I'll agree if you ask nicely." Truth be told, she wasn't planning on agreeing at all. She just wanted him to beg. Flash, however, visibly recoiled at the insinuation. "It's not about that at all," he protested. "You said it wasn't your thing, and I respect that." Respect it? Sunset almost scoffed again. The boy had been trying to initiate intimacy with her every time they were alone in his room, ever since that first and only time. Still, she said nothing as he continued talking. "Honestly, Sunset, I used to enjoy hanging out with you, even before you became my girlfriend," he sighed. "Playing guitar together, or video game nights, going to the movies. You were genuinely fun to be around." His expression turned pained. "But you started getting more and more distant," he grimaced, looking away. "When you requested to never invite my friends to our hangouts again, I thought you simply wanted privacy. But it's more than that, isn't it?" He shot her a glare that she returned with a fierce one of her own. "What are you insinuating?" she snarled, getting more irritated by the second. "You hate people," he snapped. "Everyone, even me." Silence rang in the burger joint as people turned to stare at the teens. Perhaps in other circumstances they would have cared about being watched, but both of them were too worked up to think about anything but the conflict they were having at the moment. "Hate?" Sunset raised an eyebrow. "I don't hate anyone. It's more like utter indifference." She was barely able to suppress the evil cackle that was fighting to come out of her throat. After all, soon enough it wouldn't matter. She would be leaving this pathetic dimension behind. "And that's precisely why I can't keep being your boyfriend," he yelled, giving her the angriest look she'd ever seen on his face. "You're mean, abusive, unpleasant, and only care about yourself." Sunset clenched her fist under the table, and her heartbeat quickened. She would never admit it to herself, but hearing those words actually made her feel a pang of pain inside her chest. "I thought I could fix you," he kept talking. "I thought you were just going through a rough patch and that, with enough love, you'd go back to being the girl I fell in love with. Rough around the edges, but not malicious." Sunset wanted to roll her eyes at his words. So now he had a hero complex? How pathetic. "But you keep getting worse and worse, and I can't ignore the abusive way you treat people anymore." "Why do you care?" she asked defensively. "I never bully you." "But you bully literally everybody else." He yelled once more, his voice rising in volume even more than before. "Even my friends." "Oh, so it's about them," she scoffed. "It's about you. And what it says about me to be dating the meanest girl there's ever been at CHS. His chest was heaving as he looked at her with an expression she had never seen before in his usually kind face. It was a mix of anger, disappointment, and disgust. Sunset shifted in her seat, her spine stiff against the chair's backrest, jaw clenched so hard it ached. She blinked rapidly, furious at the sting in her eyes. Damn this dusty old place for making her tear up. It wasn't him, it couldn't be him. Her nails bit into the fabric of her skirt as she forced her breathing to remain steady, every muscle in her body screaming for composure. But Flash seemed to notice despite her efforts, and his glare softened just enough for guilt to creep in. He looked away, dragging a few sharp breaths, calming himself before speaking again. "I'm sorry, Sunset, but I can't keep doing this anymore." He sighed, clearly exhausted by the whole ordeal. "That's why I'm breaking up with you." The finality of those words, of his tone, finally dawned on Sunset, and she realized with a start that he was serious. He was breaking up with her for real. It wasn't an empty threat to get something out of her. A few months ago, this news would have been devastating. Not because she cared about Flash, but because it meant going hungry during far more weekends than she felt comfortable with. Now, Well, now it was barely an inconvenience. She had enough cash to be able to buy some cheap meals during the remaining weekends before she'd go back to Equestria for good. It'd be fine. And the pain she felt in her chest, the tightness in her throat, it was nothing. She'd probably eaten her burger too quickly, that's all. Or maybe the cook had messed up and burnt the meat. That certainly explained the bitter taste in her mouth. You know what? Sunset said abruptly. I don't even care. I never wanted to date you in the first place. I just did it out of pity. She filled her words with as much venom as possible, wanting to hurt him. Then she grabbed her backpack, ready to leave. Oh, and the reason I never want to have sex again. You have a tiny peepee, and I don't even want to know how to use it. Satisfied with the pained look on his face, she turned around and flicked him off as she walked away, trying to ignore the dread and loneliness that was starting to creep up on her already, making her unable to properly savor the fact she'd been the one to get the last word. In a few weeks it wouldn't matter, she told herself. She would be Equestria's ruler and leave this pathetic human world, and everyone she met on it, behind. Damn. Negativity. Sunset sighed, her posture stiffening at the memory of just how awful she had been, even to the only person who actually gave a damn about her back then. She remembered Celestia's words as she watched him walk away without even glancing at her. And for the first time, she wondered what he must have felt back then. Maybe the reason he ignored her wasn't malice or disdain, but something simpler. Maybe he was hurting just like her. The thought made her chest tighten. What would have happened if she'd fallen to her darkest impulses for the other day? Would she have remained a silent regret? Would she have remained a silent regret for him, haunting him with the impossibility of a proper closure? She shifted on her feet, uncomfortable. Something about that didn't seem right. Flash! The word came out her mouth before she could stop herself, making the boy and his friends halt on their tracks and turn to look at her. She shrank under their gazes, suspicious, judging, and instantly regretted having opened her mouth at all. She definitely wasn't ready for this. Never mind, she mumbled, gaze dropping. She tensed up when they lingered there in silence, briefly wondering if they'd taken impromptu revenge on her. However, Flash's quiet voice startled her. Go ahead, I'll catch you guys later, he told his friends. They mumbled a few protests, but ultimately relented. It wasn't until the sound of their footsteps had faded away that Sunset finally allowed herself to look up, heart pounding hard inside her chest. She was expecting contempt, perhaps even rage, but Flash's concerned gaze somehow felt crueler than either of those. You wanted to talk? He asked, putting his hands inside his jacket's pockets. A nervous habit Sunset knew all too well. She looked away again, deciding it'd be easier to speak if her gaze was anywhere but on him. Then she took a deep breath, bracing herself. I'm sorry about everything. Her heart clenched. Somehow that hadn't felt like it was enough, despite her sincerity. She closed her eyes tight, forced herself to keep going. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry about all the awful things I said to you. I'm sorry about wasting your time, about... A hand landed on her shoulder, interrupting her increasingly agitated apology. She flinched and pulled away, finally opening her eyes, looking up at Flash. He had a sorrowful expression on his face. I'm sorry too, he said at last, quiet, strained. What? She hadn't expected this at all. I know I hurt you, he clarified, looking down in shame. I'm not sure how, but I know I did. Sunset stiffened, flashing back to that awful night, the one that still clung to her like a cloak woven in threads of shame, to the inescapable pressure she had felt every time Flash had asked for intimacy. But of course he didn't know. Of course he couldn't give her a proper apology. How could he? When she spent so long convincing both of them that nothing was wrong. You didn't, she clung to the lie. Sunset. And even if you did... Sunset took a deep breath, shuddering breath. I deserved it. Flash shifted uncomfortably on his feet as the silence rang between them. Don't say that, he spoke, voice wavering. It's true, she sighed. He hesitated for a moment, then went to lean against the wall next to her. I disagree. Sunset simply hummed. His words felt insincere, but she couldn't blame him. Still, despite how awful and nerve-wracking this conversation was, she supposed it was better to get it over with and finally put an end to this unresolved part of her life. I still have your guitars, you know, she said after a moment, if you want them. She couldn't even bring herself to finish the sentence. The mere thought of giving up on music entirely was too painful, but keep them. Flash's voice surprised her. I don't need them anymore. They were gifts. Sunset nodded, relieved at the answer, even if she felt awful about accepting his answer so readily. Are you, Flash rubbed the back of his neck with his hand, nervous. Are you with Dash's group? Sunset's eyes widened and she turned to look at him with disbelief. Was he really trying to make small talk? No, not really. She mumbled out an answer, stunned. I see. He answered awkwardly. In that case, well, you could join my band, maybe? He offered with a tentative smile like a novelist branch. It'll be like old times. Sunset's fist clenched. Old times. Back when she was still learning from Flash how to play. Back when his friends teased him about being in love and accused her of being a liar when she denied it. Back when Flash had been in love with her, and she liked the attention too much to say no. Alright, I don't even know where I stopped. She sighed. She had enjoyed herself to an extent, but she didn't really want to go back to that. Thanks, but I don't think your friends would want me there. She answered diplomatically. Well, Flash pursed his lips. I could convince them. Classic Flash. So blind to her discomfort, always pushing gently, as if that was the right thing to do. Thanks, but I'll pass, she said at last. I don't plan on joining the event. Oh, well, he slumped. That's too bad. I was looking forward to seeing you play. The first sincere smile appeared on his face. You're a natural. Sunset blinked, surprised at the compliment, then it smiled as well. I had a good teacher. We should play again sometime. He bumped her shoulder with his. It'd be fun. Sunset raised an eyebrow at the offer, skeptical. Just as friends, I promise. He raised his hands defensively. We'll see, she answered at last. Truthfully, that'd be too awkward for her, but she didn't want to shut him off completely either. All right, he nodded, then looked off towards the hallway with his friends. His friends had disappeared into. I should probably go now. They must be waiting for me. Right, she nodded. See you. See you around, Sunset. He waved at her, then quickly retreated into the hallway. Sunset could have sworn his steps were lighter now, and his posture more relaxed. He got to walk away with a clean ending, with apologies that fit neatly into what he already understood. Sunset didn't begrudge him for that. This conversation hadn't been about fairness or justice or truth laid bare. It had been about stopping the ache from rotting inside her any longer. She let out a long, shuddering exhale, feeling the tension leave her own body. Well, that hadn't been as bad as she thought. Awkward, yes, but at least they hadn't yelled at each other. There'd been no tears and no demon transformation. More than that, however, it felt liberating to not have their last interaction looming heavily over her, like a dark storm cloud ready to burst. It was like a huge weight was lifted off her shoulders, and for once, she was glad she listened to Celestia. Right, that's the end of the chapter. Thanks for reading, and for the comments you leave, they really do help me write more. I hope you like this partial resolution to Sunset's relationship with Flash. I know it wasn't perfect, but life rarely is. That doesn't mean the scene is meant to excuse past harm, just to show that where Sunset is right now in her healing. Plus, maybe this whole thing will be explored in the future, since his wounds aren't so rough. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to read the Lesbian Twilight. That's one of the names down here. I thought I was the only one with lesbian in my name. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the story between Flash and Sunset now. I didn't read it before because, like, I don't know. I guess I wasn't interested or something. I don't know. Or some of the tags were concerning, so I didn't read it. But I think I read like the first 2 paragraphs or something. Like, it doesn't really like explicitly say anything, I think. So I'm gonna go read that and then have it in this kind of collection. Alright, playing the part, TaniaHylian is the Flash thing I was talking about. Summary. Staying with Flash on a cold winter night wasn't anything out of the ordinary for Sunset. For him, however, it seemed like the perfect chance to take things to the next level. If she wanted to keep the illusion of the relationship alive, she only had one choice, to take the path of least resistance. But was it really a choice? I just read this quickly because, like, my cafeteria is going to close in like an hour, and their time's really weird because it's spring break. Sunset was at Flash's house, as usual. It was a winter Friday night, like many she spent with him before. I'm already fucking up. Hold on, let me just start over. Sunset was at Flash's house as usual. It was a winter Friday night, like many she'd spent with him before. full of pizza, soda, video games, and guitars. Most importantly, it was warm in his room. He had a heater, a blanket, and plenty of jackets for her to borrow. With a raging snowstorm outside, she literally wouldn't have been able to survive such a night without him. She knew as much. But that was fine. Flash was kind, and his dad never said anything when she stayed the night. He just gave Flash that proud, annoying smile, as if he was in on some insidious secret. Still, she stayed over plenty of times in the past, so often in fact that it wasn't a big deal anymore. It really wasn't. It shouldn't be. Yet Flash was making a big deal about it again. All through the afternoon, he had been subtly touching her in bolder ways that she usually allowed, then assuring her he'd stop when she asked him to, only for him to try again just moments later. Even now, as they watched one of his favorite cartoons, one of his arms was wrapped around her shoulders possessively, pulling her a little too close, making her uncomfortable. And then he turned and kissed her. She allowed it, of course. That's what girlfriends were supposed to do. She learned the script by now, so she executed her part flawlessly, leaving Flash gasping for air afterwards, passion replacing love in his eyes. The sight always made Sunset shudder despite herself. It was an intensity she couldn't match, and that somehow made her feel vulnerable. No, she was in charge here. The boy was completely and utterly in love with her. The fact she didn't reciprocate gave her the advantage of clear mind. It was all well calculated. Everything was under control. Really, it was all part of the plan. Sunset. His voice was low and sultry as he started kissing her neck insistently. Her body instinctively wanted to recoil at the nasty sensation, but she used every ounce of will inside herself to remain still. Sunset, I want you. The word sent shivers down her spine, but not the good kind. She swallowed hard, not breathing, catching for a fraction of a second before she forced herself to speak. I'm here. Her voice was defensive and her expression tense. Finally, Flash pulled back and looked in her eyes. You know what I mean, he sighed. I know you do. Sunset's stomach dropped. Of course she knew. Which is why she'd rather play dumb. Her lips pressed together and she forced a neutral expression as she spoke. I have no idea what you're talking about. Her flat, plain tone would have probably convinced anyone else but not Flash. The boy knew her too well, unfortunately. One of her mistakes. She'd been careless at the beginning, trusting him too much, letting him see the real her. You do, he countered back, placing a fleeting kiss on her lips. I would just like to know why you resisted so much. His expression was soft. Too soft, almost pitying. Sunset hated being pitied. I don't. Her denial was quick, harsh, perhaps too much so. Flash simply raised an eyebrow, challenging, like he always did when Sunset didn't want to admit she lost fair and square at a game. It's fine if you're not ready. His callous hand reached up and gently caressed her cheek. She almost pulled away, but caught herself before he noticed. Shit, I hope you didn't hear that. Perhaps in other circumstances, the gesture would have felt comforting, but coupled with those words, it just sounded patronizing to her. I would just like to know why, so I can help you feel more comfortable with me. His gaze was pleading for answers that Sunset couldn't give. Not if she wanted the boy to remain in love with her. She averted her gaze, absent-mindedly caressing the fabric on the couch. The truth was, she never felt attracted to him. Not in that way. He was kind, he was loving, he was fun, and he was the perfect boyfriend. Theoretically speaking, any girl would have been ecstatic for having a boyfriend like him. Sunset was just grateful. Perhaps something was wrong with her, or perhaps everyone else was simply lying about romance even existing. Or maybe sexual desire was an illness that affected most of the population, but had been normalized because humans were stupid. Whatever the case, she knew that she knew what was expected of her, by society, and most importantly, by Flash. She had to comply at some point. She couldn't say no forever. She wanted to keep the illusion of the good girlfriend intact. So instead of honesty, she chose deception once more. I'm not comfortable, she sighed, avoiding his gaze. But I've never... She trailed off, unsure of what she'd been about to say. She never wanted to. She never felt the desire. Any of those possibilities would make Flash think she was broken. Me neither. His words made Sunset turn to look at him, puzzled. He looked and sounded sincere, but he clearly didn't feel the same way as she did. Had there been a misunderstanding? A soft kiss on her lips confirmed it. I'll be gentle, I promise. Sunset shuddered at the finality of his statement.
her fingers digging into the couch. "I will," he said. No question to answer. Just the option to take the path of least resistance. So when his hand slipped under her shirt, she let him. Her body went stiff, her chest tightened, and her breath hitched. But she didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She just let him. I don't know. I guess I can read this. As her clothes were methodically taken off, as he led her to his bed, as he offered her gentle reassurances and soft kisses, she just let him. She went through the motions, mirroring his touch, smiling and nodding when needed, barely registering what he was doing. Suddenly, she wasn't even in her own body. She knew what was happening to it, but she could barely feel anything. Perhaps it was because she wasn't used to not being a pony. After all, the sight of her human frame still made her uncomfortable, especially naked. Yeah, that was it. That was why, even when he kissed spots that should have made her feel even the slightest spark, she felt nothing at all. It's not that she was broken, this just wasn't her body, or so she told herself. Yet when the expected intrusion came, it hurt nonetheless. She stifled a whimper and put on a neutral mask. If she was going to do this, she'd at least preserve her dignity. She focused on the cold sipping in her toes despite the heater. She concentrated on the thumping beat of her own heart inside her ears. She counted the ticking seconds, only distracted by flashes, rhythmic thrusts, ragged breaths, and occasional kissing. She knew rationally that he was being gentle, but the act still felt invasive. It was painful, tiring. It couldn't have lasted long, but it felt like an eternity before he slumped against her, his sweat-drenched body clamming against her cold one. She wrapped her arms around him, hoping his radiating heat would be enough to restore some life in her, but instead it just heightened her discomfort, especially when he cuddled her and pulled the blanket over their body, still naked. The skin-on-skin contact made her nauseous. "Thank you," he sighed contently as he placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. "That was amazing." "Yeah," she squeaked out, forcing herself to speak. It was. Satisfied, Flash pulled her even closer, letting out a content sigh. "You're the best girlfriend I could have asked for. I hope you know that." "I try." For once she was honest, she did try to be everything Flash wanted, even if it was just a performance. "I love you." The words felt like a slap to her face, a challenge. Could she lie about something like this? Could she keep the illusion? She'd already sacrificed too much to back down now. I love you too." Her words were shaky, barely above a whisper. She hated how small and vulnerable she sounded, but Flash seemed satisfied with the answer. Since he pulled her even closer than before, his body relaxing as he fell asleep soon after. Not sunset, though. As she stared at the ceiling, barely visible in the dark, the discomfort made itself tangible all over her body, as if her skin was dirty, a slimy coat she couldn't get rid of. She wanted to scratch it off, to get rid of this body and entirely be a pony again, yet she forced composure upon herself. Her body remained more rigid than if she was suffering an episode of sleep paralysis. It certainly felt as oppressing and suffocating, but no shadows attacked her from the darkness. She almost wished they would, to have something to distract herself with. If even the ticking of the clock felt oppressive, like a painful reminder of how long she'd have to remain there, cuddling Flash under the covers. His slow, steady breathing felt like a mockery, peaceful, unaware, like she was slowly drowned in silence beside him. She wanted to scream, but could only afford to let out a shuddering breath. A moment later, she felt tears streaming down her face, leaving trails that promptly turned freezing cold. She wiped them off furiously and raged at herself for this pathetic act of weakness, and had Flash for making her feel this way. So what if she was a little sore? It was nothing to cry about, and the act itself, it had been pure strategy, manipulation even. Now that she'd relented, the boy would love her even more. She could probably ask for anything, and he'd say yes in a heartbeat, just for the chance of getting a taste of this again. Yes, she'd wanted this, she did. Yet the moment she let herself feel Flash's skin in her own again, Her nausea returned in full force. She barely had time to get out of bed and run to Flash's private bathroom before emptying the contents of her stomach. Stupid pizza. Why was it so delicious yet unhealthy? Clearly it had been too much for her body to handle. Yeah, that was it. It wasn't because... She stopped her train of thought, forcing herself to clean up her mouth and then return to the room where her boyfriend still lay asleep. She was thankful that he was a heavy sleeper. Carefully, she put on her pajamas and then sat at his small couch in front of the gaming system. It smelled of pizza and Cheetos, something she started to associate with their gaming sessions, one of the best parts of being Flash's girlfriend. Yet it gave little comfort tonight. A nearby window rattled, stirred by the snowstorm that still raged outside. Suddenly, she regretted not having gone to her dilapidated place instead. She knew it would have awaited her on such a cold night, but of course, yet, it felt like the better alternative. She inhaled sharply, tensing up. No, she couldn't think like that. She couldn't give up. Just a few more months. She just had to hold on a little longer. Then she'd go back to Equestria and conquer it by force. Somehow. She closed her eyes, picturing herself in another world, another body, her body, building power behind her imagination, regal, immortal, untouchable. Yeah, it'd be worth it. It had all been part of the plan. It was her choice. It was. Alright, that's the end. Look at the comments. Let's do comments. Alright, I'm not gonna read it, but there's one comment on here. So yeah, that's it. I guess it's kind of what I expected. But of course, like, I mean, it's just surprising how, I don't know. It's really hard to find anything like wrong with what I read. It's kind of surprising. Like, I mean, I guess it's how the world is. I guess like it's kind of hard to, I guess, publish an actual book. So I guess the people who would be doing that are just like writing on AO3. I guess. I don't know. It's just always impressive to me. It's always impressed me that the writing on AO3 and the writing around Equestria Girls. I think Equestria Girls fandom might be just like different. I don't know. Cause like the Final Fantasy, I don't know. There's some like gooners, just gooners of Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy fandom. Like all this stuff is just like gooning. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say about that.